Anastasia Patricia Rubinska was born in 1996 in Poland, and from the very beginning, she stood out. To her family, she was more than just another bright-eyed child. She was a dreamer. The kind of girl who believed the world was big, beautiful, and hers to explore. She talked about traveling to far-off places, walking runways, and one day seeing her face on the covers of magazines. And honestly, she could have done it. She had the drive, the looks, the spirit, but she also had something else, something far more dangerous, an unwavering belief that people were good. Even as she got older, her father described her as trusting to a fault, the kind of person who thought evil was something that happened in movies, not real life. But it was real, and eventually it found her. In her early 20s, Anastasia started to turn those childhood dreams into reality. She graduated high school, enrolled in a hairdressing academy, landed a few small modeling gigs, and began working abroad at luxury hotels and resorts. Every trip brought her closer to the future she envisioned. She wasn't just chasing dreams, she was living them. And through it all, there was Michal, her boyfriend of 13 years. They were inseparable, soulmates even. They shared everything, laughter, struggles, and one bold mission to see the world together. In May 2023, they packed their bags for Kos, Greece, a stunning island where they planned to work, save up, and start the next chapter of their lives. It was supposed to be a beautiful adventure, but within weeks, everything shattered. On June 12th, Anastasia left her hotel shift after badly burning her hand. She was tired, in pain, and hungry, but instead of resting, she stepped out alone to buy alcohol. Just a quick errand, just a few minutes, but she never came back. Days later, she'd be found dead naked, buried under a pile of leaves and trash, discarded like she never mattered. The investigation that followed would reveal twisted secrets, unanswered questions, and a chilling betrayal that no one saw coming. This is the story of how a young woman with endless light and limitless trust walked straight into the shadows. You're watching True Crimes by Dominik, where we don't just tell the story, we try to understand how it was allowed to happen. If this case moves you like it did me, subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. We dive into real cases every 2 days, and your voice matters here. Okay, now let's begin. When you hear the words volunteers and search party in a true crime case, you already know the situation is dire. Among the group combing through the dry, unforgiving terrain of Marmary, Greece, was a young woman named Anna. The ground beneath her feet cracked with every step, the scorching June sun beating down relentlessly as she moved with quiet urgency. Twigs snapped underfoot. The air was still, too still. She was one of many combing through miles of sun-bleached wilderness, each with a stick in hand, prodding the earth, hoping not to find what they feared they might. But Anna, she had a destination in mind. She reached a lone tree, one that might have looked unremarkable to most, but to investigators, it stood out because not long ago, someone reported seeing a man, visibly distressed, dragging a bundle of thorny branches right to this spot. That man was seen at a strange hour, and his behavior didn't sit right. As Anna began shifting the branches around the base of the tree, something changed. The wind picked up just slightly, and with it came a smell that no one ever forgets. Decay, death. Anna called out to her search partner, and from that moment on, everything became a blur. Because beneath that crude camouflage of sticks and leaves was a body. A woman brutally discarded and left to rot under the blazing sun. So badly injured, so disfigured, not even her fingerprints could identify her. That woman was Anastasia Rubinska. Back at the hotel, Anastasia's boyfriend, Michal, had been working his shift when her messages started coming in. She was texting him updates, nothing alarming at first, just casual check-ins, letting him know where she was, who she was with. She said she was out, having a few drinks. But then, something shifted. Around 10:30 p.m., Anastasia texted Michal again. This time, she asked him to come pick her up. She didn't feel safe. That one line, "I don't feel safe," would later haunt him. Mikhail told her he was still working, but he'd head to her location as soon as he could. In the meantime, she reassured him that someone else, a man on a motorcycle, had offered to give her a ride back. That sent alarm bells ringing for Mikhail. He didn't like the idea of Anastasia getting on a bike with some stranger, and he told her so. But Anastasia, ever trusting, believed there was no real danger, that people were just being kind. She didn't realize she'd just made the most fatal mistake of her life. After that, the messages became scattered. First, Anastasia sent him her location. Then minutes later, another. Then another. And then, nothing. Silence. No more texts. No more calls. She was just gone. Mikhail's heart sank. Panic set in fast. He alerted the local authorities and contacted her family back in Poland. Something was very wrong. Or, thankfully, the police acted quickly. A missing persons case was opened, and with the information from Mikhail's phone, those strange location pings, the search began. But there was a problem. The messages didn't give them a clear trail. And time was slipping away. Investigators turned to surveillance cameras. Anastasia had mentioned being near a local supermarket, and sure enough, when police pulled the footage, there she was. At first, she appeared calm, sitting near a fence, sipping wine and eating snacks. Alone. But what came next sent chills down everyone's spine. One by one, 5 men approached her. They didn't seem aggressive, not at first glance, laughing, chatting, like it was all just innocent fun. They looked like locals, and to someone as open-hearted as Anastasia, maybe it felt harmless, maybe even friendly. But it wasn't. Multiple witnesses would later confirm the sighting. Anastasia surrounded by 5 men around 8:30 p.m. And by 10:30 p.m., she was sending out messages that she was scared, drunk, and needed help. That 2-hour gap between casual small talk and desperate pleas for help, it's a mystery soaked in dread. The thought of Anastasia alone, vulnerable, far from home, surrounded by strangers in a foreign country is unbearable. She knew something was wrong. She asked for help, and still, no one reached her in time. As investigators dove deeper into the CCTV footage surrounding the supermarket and nearby streets, something chilling emerged, something that made the entire room go still. Remember that message Anastasia sent Mikhail, the one where she said she didn't feel safe, but that some guy on a motorcycle had offered to give her a ride? Well, there it was, caught on camera. Anastasia, climbing onto the back of a motorcycle, with one of the 5 men she was seen with earlier. That moment, that exact footage confirmed everyone's worst fear. Anastasia had left with a stranger, and now she was gone. Suddenly, the vague puzzle pieces were snapping into place with terrifying clarity. The police realized they weren't just dealing with a case of a missing tourist. No, this was turning into something much darker. And fast. They got to work immediately, tracing the identities of the 5 men who had been with Anastasia that night. What they uncovered was unsettling. All 5 were undocumented immigrants, originally from Bangladesh and Pakistan. Interviews with locals led detectives to a nearby shopkeeper who recognized one of the men from that very night. He identified him as Salahuddin S., a Bangladeshi man who had been living on the island of Kos for years. Salahuddin had once worked in housing projects, but according to locals, he'd recently lost his job. Beyond that, details about him were scarce. His full name? Still unknown. But what investigators did learn painted a disturbing picture. Salahuddin had a criminal past. The specifics weren't shared with the public, but let's just say this. He wasn't the kind of man you'd want your daughter getting on a motorcycle with, day or night. So the question loomed large. Why did he offer to take Anastasia home? And what role, if any, did the other 4 men play? With no time to waste, the police launched a manhunt. But surprisingly, it didn't take long to locate them. The 5 men, the last people to see Anastasia alive, were all brought in for questioning within hours. Now detectives had these men in front of them, and right away something didn't sit right. Their demeanor, their stories, none of it felt solid. Still, the investigation had to follow protocol. First question, were you with Anastasia on the night of June 12th? To everyone's surprise, they didn't deny it. Yes, they said, they had approached her, They talked. She seemed drunk, disoriented. According to them, they were just trying to help a young woman get home safely. And after that, they said they left her and went on their way. But the police weren't buying it. Because if Anastasia made it home, she wouldn't be missing. If their intentions were good, why did Salahuddin have scratches all over his face and arms? Another man in the group had a fresh wound on his nose, another scratch that looked eerily like it came from someone fighting back. A struggle. That's what the detectives saw when they looked at those injuries. And though the men insisted the wounds were from a random accident a few days earlier, no one in that interrogation room believed it. Not for a second, because here's what they had. A missing woman, a last known sighting with 5 men, a motorcycle ride with one of them, 2 of the men showing visible signs of a physical confrontation. It didn't take a detective to connect the dots. But suspicion alone wasn't enough to make an arrest. The law requires evidence, hard, tangible proof. So while they couldn't hold them, the police made sure to collect DNA samples before releasing the men. They were now official persons of interest in the case of Anastasia's disappearance. Meanwhile, Anastasia's family was spiraling with worry. She had just moved to Greece, a fresh start, a new chapter in her life. And now, not a trace, no calls, no messages, just silence. To go missing in a foreign country is terrifying, but for her loved ones, that distance made everything feel so much worse, so helpless, so unreal. On the ground, the search efforts intensified. Drones hovered. Sniffer dogs were brought in. Police canvassed neighborhoods and wilderness. But each day that passed brought no news, no breakthrough, just the unbearable unknown. Eventually, they were able to track Anastasia's phone through cell tower data, and this gave investigators something, a timeline, a location. Anastasia's phone remained active until around 11:30 p.m. That night, roughly an hour after she told me how she didn't feel safe. And its final signal, it didn't come from the area where she had sent her location earlier. It was 5 kilometers away. That meant someone had moved her phone, and possibly her. Even though the signal went dead after 11:30, police weren't ready to give up, not even close. Because now, more than ever, they were racing against time to find out what had happened to Anastasia Rubinska. Even though Anastasia was still missing, the investigation was far from at a standstill. In fact, the detectives managed to uncover something that left everyone feeling even more terrified for her. In a vacant building near Mamari, a breakthrough came, and it was one that would change everything. Police, with the help of local volunteers, discovered a cell phone buried in the rubble. It didn't take long for the investigators to confirm that the phone was Anastasia's. But when they powered it on, the horror became clear. The SIM card had been removed. The GPS was disabled. Every trace of data messages, call history, pictures was gone. The phone had been wiped clean, leaving nothing behind. It was as if someone had gone to great lengths to make sure no trace of Anastasia's final moments would ever be found. Finding the phone was a step forward, sure, but it didn't bring any comfort. It only brought more questions. Was this some kind of sick game, or a desperate attempt to cover up something even darker? The search for Anastasia grew more urgent as investigators asked the public for help. Volunteers flooded in, scouring the island for any sign of her. But as the days dragged on, it felt like the search was slipping through their fingers. Then, on June 18th, something happened that would haunt everyone involved. A volunteer named Anna, who had been tirelessly searching the Tagaki area, made a discovery that stopped her dead in her tracks. In the dense brush around a large tree, she noticed something strange. It looked like a heap of straw, but there was something wrong about it. The texture, the shape, it didn't feel right. When Anna poked it with her cane, the feeling that something was horribly off hit her like a punch in the gut. She called over the rest of the volunteers and the police, and together they began carefully removing the straw. What they uncovered was something no one could have prepared for: a plastic bag. The tension in the air was palpable. Everyone could sense that the worst was about to be revealed, but no one was prepared for what they would find. As they opened the bag, the world seemed to stop. Inside, they found the body of a woman, discarded like trash. She was completely disrobed, her lifeless form nothing more than a cruel, empty shell. And it wasn't just the state of her body that left everyone sickened. It was the unmistakable signs of violence, the way she had been disposed of, the manner in which her life had been stolen. It was clear that this wasn't just a tragic death, this was intentional, brutal, and personal. The murderer had clearly tried to destroy her identity, likely to make it impossible to recognize her. Her fingerprints gone. Nothing that could link her to her family or the world she'd once been a part of. And then came the gut-wrenching confirmation. It was Anastasia, the woman whose smile had once lit up every room. The woman who had just started a new chapter in her life. Now she was gone, her life violently taken in a place she thought would be her fresh start. Anastasia's family had already been tortured with uncertainty. The agony of not knowing where she was or what had happened to her was already unbearable. But this was something else entirely. Their daughter, their sister, was gone and they would never get her back. And as the case moved from a missing persons investigation to a homicide, the detectives knew they now had the crucial piece of evidence they needed to track down the killer. The body had been found less than 1 kilometer from the home of Salahuddin, the man who had been one of the last to see Anastasia alive. The proximity couldn't be ignored. It was like fate had pushed them right to his doorstep, and now the police knew it was time to put the handcuffs on him. The arrest was swift. When Salahuddin was brought in for questioning, his story took a sudden turn. He no longer claimed to be a good Samaritan trying to help a drunk woman get home. Now he said that he and Anastasia had been intimate at his apartment. But even with this new version of events, he still denied any involvement in her death. He insisted he knew nothing about what had happened to her. But the police weren't fooled. Not anymore. A search of Salahuddin's apartment revealed chilling evidence. Strands of blonde hair that matched Anastasia's. A blouse stained with red mark. An orange sweatshirt bearing even more stains. And that wasn't all. The detectives also found something that made their blood run cold. Scratches on Salahuddin's body, the same kinds of marks that had been seen on his friends earlier. It was becoming clearer by the second. Anastasia fought for her life, and she fought hard. But that wasn't the most damning evidence. When Salahuddin's phone was seized, his search history revealed a horrifying truth. Among the disturbing things he had Googled were phrases like, how to remove data from a phone, how to confuse the police, how to make a corpse impossible to identify. If that doesn't scream guilt, nothing does. Then came the final piece of the puzzle. Salahuddin had a plane ticket to Italy, one that was booked for the exact same day he was arrested. He was planning to leave. He was planning to run, but he didn't get the chance. In court, Salahuddin pleaded not guilty, but the prosecution wasn't having it. They laid out their case. Anastasia had been lured into Salahuddin's apartment, where he tortured her and then ultimately ended her life. Whether or not the other men were involved was still unclear, but the evidence against Salahuddin was overwhelming. In the end, the jury agreed. On December 6, 2024, Salahuddin was convicted of manslaughter with intent and sentenced to life in prison. At the sentencing, Anastasia's father, Andrzej, spoke to the press. This punishment will not bring Anastasia back, but he got what he deserved. May he never leave prison again. May he never hurt anyone again. Anastasia's story was heartbreaking, tragic, and far too common. But it also served as a reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface, even in the most unexpected places. And though her life was stolen far too soon, her family knew this. Justice had been served. For them, it would never be enough to replace the love they lost, but it was something, and that was all they could hold on to. Anastasia's case didn't just shake the island of Kos, it sent shockwaves across the world. Women everywhere were left questioning their safety, their freedom, their right to simply exist in public spaces without fear. The outrage was immediate. How could a man with a documented history of violence be walking freely through a tourist paradise? How many red flags were ignored before it was too late? As far as the public knows, only Salahuddin was ever held accountable. The other men, the ones seen with him the night Anastasia vanished, seemed to have slipped through the cracks. Whether they were accomplices, bystanders, or just lucky to escape scrutiny, we may never truly know. For Anastasia's loved ones, Salahuddin's sentencing brought a flicker of justice, but not peace. Her family had to sit in a courtroom and listen to the gruesome details of how their daughter, their sister, had suffered. And even then, the justice they received felt hollow. Because the truth is, no sentence, no matter how severe, can reverse the nightmare they've endured. Her brother Adrian once said that if he could have just 10 minutes alone with the man who took Anastasia's life, he would finish him. And while no one condones that kind of vengeance, who among us can't feel the weight of his pain? Who wouldn't want to scream into the void when someone you love is stolen from you so senselessly? Anastasia wasn't reckless. She wasn't naive. She wasn't looking for trouble. She was just a young woman trying to unwind after a tough day at work like so many of us do. She had dreams, plans, and a future she'd barely begun to live. She was only 27 years old. And yet, in a moment of unimaginable violence, everything was taken from her. When we tell stories like these here on True Crimes by Dominik, we don't do it just for the mystery or the shock value. We tell them to remember the victims, to expose the flaws in the systems meant to protect us, and sometimes to confront the darkness that hides in plain sight. So now I ask you, if you had the chance to change one thing about how society protects its most vulnerable, what would it be? And do you believe justice was truly served in Anastasia's case? Or does part of this story still feel unfinished? Let me know in the comments. I read every one. If this story hit you as hard as it hit me, please give it a like, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe so you never miss a case. New stories drop every 2 days, right here on True Crimes by Dominik. And if you want to be the first to know when the next one goes live, make sure you turn on notifications. Because these are more than just stories. They're real lives, real people. And they deserve to be remembered. Stay safe out there.